Life of Love with Joy Wilson.
Hello, dear friends, and welcome to another episode of Life of Love, where we gather to celebrate our lives with curiosity and honesty and vulnerability and see how our life of love shows up today. And so I'm with pure heart and joy to welcome back a former guest, Craig Meriwether. And so that's exciting. So stick around the whole time. This is going to be a great episode. But first, I invite you to get into your space as I get into mine. I'm going to set our intention. I'm just breathing into my heart and grounding my feet into the ground. If you're driving, please don't close your eyes, but you can still ground when you're driving. It's a calming thing, just to connect to the earth, even if you're moving. Your intention is set. Just give yourself that gift of feeling the earth beneath you, wherever you are, and get into your heart. And I thank you, Creator, God, Goddess, all that makes this big spinning wheel happen. I appreciate this opportunity to connect with a dear friend again, and the resources that aligned for me to produce this show, all the hearts and ears that are tuning in. I appreciate each person, each soul has this unique contribution. So I honor our guides as they lead us in the place that best serves us. And I open my heart to the message that comes forth for the highest good. As we enter this beautiful day of 11/11, we're recording this. It's going to be produced later, but the energy of 11/11 is here, and I honor that, and I cherish these pivotal marks, these pivotal moments where we can have a guiding star, and we always have that guiding star, but pivotal moments like these illuminate that for us. So I honor the energetics of this beautiful day and time, and the exciting things as we're adding to this grid of light. And I appreciate everyone's contribution to make this world a little bit better for ourselves and therefore everyone else and our dear Mother Earth. So I honor Craig's contributions, and I appreciate all of this. And with gratitude and love and an open heart, I present this episode, and I thank you. All right. Craig, thanks for coming back on Life of Love. We're so happy to have you back. And your new book has come out about past lives, discovering the healing power of past life regression. So congratulations on that. That's a big accomplishment.
Yeah. It kind of started off as just research on my own, just for my own curiosity's sake. And the more I kind of researched all these different topics, the more I saw the thread between them all. It's more about the science and spirituality, past lives guidebook.
Yeah. Would you like to give us a peek at what you found as far as the science? And I know I'm sort of a geek at heart. I'd like to know, if someone asks me something, if I can give a scientific explanation. It's always fun. I mean, we can feel the energies. We can know that it's true for us, but just that extra layer of, hey, this is reproducible. This is something that we found. So yeah, give us a peek into what you found scientifically. This is exciting.
Yeah, that's a big topic. The book's like 450 pages. So it's not just a quick little jaunt through life, the universe, and everything. It covers everything from time, talking about the different theories of time. And I think the book in and of itself doesn't say this is the answer. It just goes through, here's some possibilities on how this could work. And in terms of just reality that we live in, we have the holographic universe theory. We have the multiverse theory. We have computer simulation theory. We have these different theories on how we're experiencing this. And of course, I don't have a PhD in physics or anything like that. So I'm not going to tell you the definitive answer, other than people a lot smarter than me think that this is a possible way we're experiencing reality. We go through time, we go through consciousness, we go through the biology of the brain. And it's just a big barrel of curiosity for me, because one thing ends up leading to the other. And, even just with the brain, a lot of people know about the pineal gland, I'm sure, who listen to your show, Julie. And so a lot of people have heard over the last 10 years, the pineal gland. And what the research is that's come out over the last 10 years or so, some of it points to consciousness being non-local, meaning that consciousness is not held within the house of the brain, or I mean the skull, and that the brain is really a receiver and transmitter. It's like an antenna. And so memory, consciousness is not held within the brain, and that the brain pulls in information, even memories of, last week, last month, last year, high school, that's not held within this, 3-pound gelatinous hard tofu like brain of ours. But there's a little rice-sized piece of the brain called the pineal gland, and its main job is melatonin production. And that's the hormone that puts us to sleep. It starts getting created as the sun goes down, cortisol levels go down, melatonin levels go up. We sleep during the night. And then as the sun comes up, melatonin production goes down, cortisol levels go up, and we wake up. That's how it's supposed to work. And what's fascinating about the pineal gland is that it was discovered a few years ago that there's all these tiny little crystals in it. And so I got a copy of my book right here. How about that? So this is what it looks like, Past Lives Guidebook. But in the book, we're doing video, right? People can see this.
Oh, absolutely. This will be available on the video
So if
stream.
you're just listening on the audio, there's a couple pictures of the crystals. And what's fascinating about this, again, this is about the size of a piece of rice.
So that's actually a microscopic image of somebody's pineal gland.
Yeah, so that was a electron microscope photo of.
Oh, electron. Yeah, because it's so tiny.
Well,
Okay.
in this rice-sized piece of the brain, depending on how old you are, there's an average about 30,000 of those. As we grow older, we get more. So a newborn baby has about 10,000. Middle age-ish, you're having about 30 to 40,000. As you get older, 60,000. And there's no evolutionary need for these crystals. They have nothing to do with melatonin production. But when pressure is applied, you get this electromagnetic field created. So a lot of crystals will do this. This is like a quartz crystal. Remember, I had those quartz watches. And the quartz, oh, there you go. It's electricity.
I love my crystals.
And so, a lot of crystals are in our electronics because it can conduct electricity, can produce a little electrical charge when pressure is applied, mechanical pressure is applied. And so the crystals in our pineal gland, when pressure is applied through breathing techniques, circulating the cerebral fluid, electromagnetic field is formed, measurable. And this is where some research studies have theorized that this is what allows us to turn on the antenna and reach higher realms of information and pull it in. And so, that's kind of the basis of the information I'm trying to present, not just scientific information, but even historical information of what different cultures and timelines have thought about us living life after life after life and the ability to perceive past lives. And I start with Neanderthal burial sites. Is there any evidence that Neanderthals had any impression of life after death? And go from there. 50,000 years ago, throughout history, looking at different cultures, seeing which time periods actually had theories about this. And it was really just my own curiosity, one thing leading to the other, even a big, huge chapter on remote viewing. And as you can see, this kind of goes all over the place. Not only the more biology of the brain, what's happening, the research behind it, theories around the universe and reality, as well as the history, and going so far as to look specifically at things like remote viewing research. And that's when the U.S. government, back in the early 1970s, found that the Soviet Union was doing experiments on ESP and trying to weaponize consciousness, basically. Because if psychics were real, mediums were real, and ESP were real, could you then weaponize this as a way to spy on your enemy? And so the CIA was concerned, and they wanted to find, some way of also researching this. And kind of long story short, they hooked up with Stanford University and they started researching what they eventually called remote viewing, allowing your consciousness to explore another space. So maybe around the world. They got one of the first experiments they ever did was a double-blind study where somebody had picked a location that they wanted the remote viewer to explore. Well, he had picked his summer cabin out in the forest that nobody really knew about or knew where it was. But that was so small compared to the underground bunker that was nearby. That was a National Security Administration's spy bunker of Soviet satellites that nobody really knew about. And so 2 people remote viewed the bunker, including one who got names of files, the top secret operations they were running, and everybody working there had a name badge. So you got names of people who worked there. And there was a big to do between the CIA and the National Security Administration because they're thinking CIA was spying on them and all that. And so the cabin was there, the coordinates were there, but it was so small compared to the huge underground bunker that the 2 remote viewers focused on that. So that gave them enough credence to go forward. And they spent decades and millions of dollars researching remote viewing, seeing if they could put consciousness, and had great success. I'm not saying it's 100% successful, but it was successful enough to keep the operation going. If it didn't work, it would have been, they would have spent 3 months on it and $200. But I'm guessing it's still going. They said they shut it down because they got embarrassed when it finally came out and it got leaked that they were doing this kind of research. But it worked well enough that they kept it going. And I'm sure they just moved it across the hall into a different office and are calling it something else. But it worked. And what they found is they now could move their consciousness to another location to explore and spy, if you will. But they could also move forward in time and backwards in time. And again, this isn't just like, oh, I hope this happened. That would be a great story. It's like, these are documents you can find on government websites because of the Freedom of Information Act. They actually did this, and it actually seemingly worked according to the research. And when they, kind of started to disavow the program because all the, senators and government people got embarrassed, the people who were in the program started writing books about it. And this is what we did, and this is how it is. So a lot of information is out there. And it's a fascinating thing because if consciousness is non-local, meaning it's not held, it's not trapped within the skull, this brain, what are the potentials of it? Can we go backwards and forwards in time? Can we move across locations? And seemingly the remote viewing aspect of it may be a little more difficult, moving consciousness across location, but it doesn't seem to be for time. And my experience in working with people is everybody seems to have the ability to do this. We all have a pineal gland filled with crystals. And so it's that aspect of moving into a more quiet state of mind and body and just accessing this potential that we all have.
I like how you started with the physiology of the pineal gland, and that's our computer chip. That's our access point. But okay, so I had a couple questions that came up because you're sparking all this in me, literally. So if all our memory is located outside of us and accessible, how does the theory? And I'm sure this is a simple explanation, but I'm just curious. If somebody suffers a traumatic brain injury,
Mm.
and they lose memory, like say they lose their short-term memory, they can't remember their address, they can't remember what year it is. If everything's in a crystal stored somewhere else, is it
Mhm.
that our brain is like it's not able to process that information because we have an injury?
If
It's
somebody
like,
has a traumatic brain injury, it's like you're breaking the antenna. And the
okay.
information itself is not held within the crystals of the pineal gland. It's the crystals create the electromagnetic field, which kind of turns on the antenna, which pulls in information. One research study says it's from 0 point field. And that's that energy that binds the universe together. If you were to look at an atom with an electron microscope and just look at the innards, what makes up an atom, the neutron, the electron, and then the subatomic particles and the quarks. But the very essence of an atom is this vibrational field, which binds everything together, but kind of like the Force in Star Wars.
Mhm.
And so it's that field that holds all information. And by using this kind of antenna or radar dish of our brain, we can pull in information if we know what we want to look for. There may be
Mm.
people who just download information. Maybe that's people who have premonitions or something. Oftentimes there's more questions than answers by the time you get this.
And then why have they, and back to the physiology, and I'm going to go from there. Why does it get larger as we age?
Oh, I have no idea. I haven't seen any research to explain other than your brain grows or you create new neural pathways. And even the neural pathways may be not so much holding the information, but pulling in the information. So
Hmm.
just as you mentioned, traumatic brain injury, well, that may be damaging the antenna. If you have an antenna, back in the day, that's how we got our TV signals or radio signals
Hmm.
into our radios, into our TVs, is we had the rabbit ears on the TV or we had the big antenna on top of our house. Well, if it gets damaged or bent or broken, it's like, well, you're not going to pull in your signal or it's going to be fuzzy or something.
Yeah.
But
Or I'm thinking like maybe like you're getting it, but your brain isn't processing it for
yeah,
your 3D consciousness when
right.
you have
Yeah.
an injury.
Yeah. Just
That
like your TV, because what they're saying with the pineal gland is that it acts like a transducer. And so back in the day, I don't know if it's like this anymore with streaming TV and all that, but back in the day when you wanted to watch MASH or Cheers or whatever the show, Frasier, you had to turn your TV on at 9 o'clock on Thursday to channel 10. And at that same moment in Los Angeles, a TV studio had this big cassette tape and they put it into equipment, and that was that week's episode. And that equipment had a transducer and it take that image and that sound from the magnetic tape and turn it into a frequency. It would then take its little radar dish and shoot it into the airwaves. And now there's all these, and right now even, there's all these radio waves, there's these TV station waves, there's microwaves, now there's cell tower, now there's Wi-Fi, there's all the Bluetooth stuff. But back in the day, it was pretty much just microwaves and radio waves and TV waves. And so I would turn my TV on at 9 o'clock on a Thursday, turn it to channel 10, and my antenna, whether there's the rabbit ears on my TV or the big antenna on my house, would start microscopically vibrating to the same frequency as the show I want to watch. And I pulled just that frequency in as opposed to all the other radio stations. That's why when you hear the radio station, 91X on 91.8, well, that's that frequency. But then the rock station is 101.2 and the classical station is 86.1 or something. All these different frequencies, you turn your radio to the right frequency, you pull in just that station. Well, when I pull in my TV show, I also have a transducer in my TV that turns that frequency back into image and sound. So what the research indicates, or some research is theorizing, is that the pineal gland acts like a transducer and it's pulling in this information and turning it back into image and sound. But it may be like you're just kind of explaining, well, maybe we kind of manipulate it in a way that we can understand it. If we're pulling in this fire hose of information from the 5D world of spirit, and we're trying to turn it into a 3D information that we can understand, we might translate it in a way that we're personally going to understand it, which may be different than somebody else. Like when I work with people, when we do a past life regression, we always get to the end of that life because that's where a lot of, the throwing action or the connection may happen to this current life. What are the feelings and the thoughts happening as you pass in that life? Well, you return to spirit. We move up to spirit world, what Michael Newton talks about in Journey of Souls and Destiny of Souls. And you move up into that spirit world. And while generally people have a similar experience of spirit world, it may look or sense it a little bit differently. Like you may go to the healing place to create healing, maybe a spiritual healing or emotional healing, a mindset issue that needs healing, or even a physical healing. And in the healing place, there may be water used or light or energy, or maybe there's just your spirit guide, or maybe there's other healing beings there. Well, I'm going to guess there's probably not water up in spirit world when we're just souls in this spiritual energy state. But I think that's this 3D brain of ours trying to translate all this information in a way that we'll understand it, creating the kind of metaphor of it, if you will, so that we can actually grasp what is happening and create the healing or get the knowledge or the wisdom that we're looking for. And so people may experience a bit differently just because of their own life experience or the way they need to understand it in the moment. And that's part of what the crystals are doing, or this antenna of our brain is doing, is translating this information just so we can understand it and not, people have had near-death experiences and other kind of spiritual experiences and, maybe out-of-body experiences. And they sometimes see colors that they can't explain. So how do you do that? How do you explain a color that you've never seen before? How do you explain color to a blind person? It's like you have to make accommodations. And so I think that's what the brain does when it brings in this extraordinary information. It has to make accommodations and translate it in a way that we'll actually understand it. If you ever seen that movie Interstellar with Matthew McConaughey and Anne Hathaway, and not to give anything away, but that movie's been out there for a while. It's a great movie. It's Christopher Nolan directed it and wrote it. And at the end, and not to give anything away, but he's trapped in the 5D world. And he's trying to communicate to the 3D Earth to get his daughter's attention.
He's pushing the books. Yeah.
Yeah. If you've seen the movie, hence pushing the books, hence the watch, hence the dust on the floor.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't come in a way that maybe made a lot of sense. Why don't you talk on the telephone? Or what? Well, he's in this D world and he has to somehow figure out how to communicate with the 3D world. And so I think that's what our brain adjusts to and translates is this kind of 5D information. It has to figure out a more metaphoric and symbolic way of doing so. It doesn't mean it's not true. It just means some of the information may not be there because we can't understand it at the moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I find it interesting, like quartz crystal, it does grow like just sitting out in the environment. So,
Yeah.
everything's connected. Like the more you know about something, the more you know about yourself, because everything seems to be a mirror
Yeah.
of other things at a different viewpoint. It's like, so that's exciting. And just, we don't even have the language to describe all the different dimensions that are available, like time, jumping in and out of time. It's not linear. We're everywhere. Well, I did love that movie, and it was a little like quirky, but I sort of enjoyed it. It was Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I really enjoyed it. And it's like watching someone else's dreamland is what I put it. It's like, well, those are some weird dreams, but it does bring forth what could be happening.
Mhm.
One of these theories,
And even
and
time is fascinating. Like you say, it doesn't necessarily flow linearly. It could just be happening all at once. Like the movie title. All time. So we're not even like accessing a memory. We're just accessing us in a different parallel universe that's happening right now. So if you have an experience of the 17,529 or 3 BC or 10,000 BC, it's not that you're accessing a memory, but you're actually accessing you that's happening right now in a parallel universe. You just happen to be able to, peer behind the curtain, maybe for healing. Maybe there's threads between these lives as you learn and grow and develop as a soul. And you're doing these kind of computer simulations here on Earth to learn and to grow. But maybe there's threads between it. There's many lives where you're trying to work through a certain task or learn a certain skill or understand more about compassion or love. And just as when you're learning math in school, in the first grade, you start off with 2 + 2 = 4. And then in the second grade, you're doing subtraction. In the third grade, you're doing times tables. And then fourth grade, long division. Then fifth grade, fractions. You keep going and going. And in high school, you're doing algebra 2, calculus, trigonometry, all the way to getting your master's degree in mathematics, where you're doing those crazy, Goodwill Hunting equations on the chalkboard. And it didn't take one grade to understand math. It took many, many years of trying to figure out 10 years of trying to really understand the concepts of mathematics. And maybe if you look at each grade as a life, maybe that's how we're learning certain skills as well, or learning love or learning compassion. And there's all sorts of different ways of having to learn it, different scenarios, different storylines that we need to move through. But it's sort of like a theater group, doing plays. Maybe they do 6 or 7 plays during the year in your town. And it's this group of 8 actors, and they decide on which play they're going to do. Let's say which play they're going to do in January. And they like the storyline. They like the way the characters are going to grow, what they're going to learn by the end of the play, how everything's going to wrap itself up. And then they choose who's going to play what role. And then they need the costumes and what time period are we going to decide it is. Because even if it was written in the, Shakespearean time, there's theater groups who do it in a different time zone. Even that Leonardo DiCaprio, Claire Danes' Romeo and Juliet, that was set in the 1990s when it was released. Where Ian McKellen did Richard III, a movie of Richard III that was set in the 1930s. So what time period are you going to do it in? What costumes do you have to get to now fit that? And then you do the play, and then you take a break. Then you decide, okay, what's the next play going to be? Who's going to play what role? What are we going to learn? How are we going to develop? And so if you can see this as you have this soul family, that maybe you're just moving from first grade to getting your master's degree together, and you keep finding new ways to grow and to learn. And maybe that's decided for you, or maybe you all volunteer to, as test pilots to figure something out, or maybe this is just your trajectory that you seem to have more of a science bent. We'll give you all the science classes, and you seem more of an artistic person. So we'll set you up with painting and music and poetry. Again, I think there's a lot more questions than answers as you dive in deep. But if you understand that we're here to learn and grow, I think that gives a lot of empathy to what's happening and how we can move through it. Because if we're here for our own learning and growth, and maybe to help others learn and grow, it kind of puts a little different spin on the, what you may be going through, even if it's been hurtful and caused a lot of pain and trauma. It's like, well, it doesn't mean it was right. It should have happened. But maybe that little tiny perspective may help release some of that hurt and pain. And that's hopefully what some of the past life regression and spirit world exploration will help do, is help release hurt and pain that people have been going through.
Yeah. So with that viewpoint, when you're working with someone doing a past life regression, is it your perspective that they're accessing another dimension? Because it doesn't seem like when I thought of it first, it was like, okay, you're going back in time, you're looking at your past life, but maybe you're accessing yourself in another dimension. Like,
Yeah, maybe.
I wanted to ask you
I got
about
a whole
that.
book trying to figure it out. And that's what's just kind of fun about it. There are
Mhm.
many ways, like the holographic universe, that imply that we are all made of all the information of the universe, and all we are is going within and accessing information. That's why maybe people can have the skill of being psychic or a medium or prophecy, because if it's a holographic universe and with a true hologram, every part of the hologram has all the information in it. And it's kind of a mind twisty way of thinking about it. If you remember those 3D bookmarks we would get with book club back in school or whatever. So you'd order some books and you get a cool 3D bookmark. It's one of those things where it's like a dolphin jumping out of the water, and you kind of twist it. It looks like it's jumping out of the water. Well, if that was a true holographic bookmark, if you cut it in half, now you have 2 dolphins jumping out, because now you just have a smaller version of that bookmark of the dolphin jumping out of the water. Well, if you cut it into 100 pieces, now you have not just a corner. No, you have a tiny little dolphin jumping out of the water. And so every aspect of the bookmark holds all the information. And so there's one aspect of the holographic universe that maybe, if that's the right theory, then maybe we're not reaching outside of ourselves to get the information, but somehow we are accessing it within our own cellular makeup, I guess. I don't know.
Hmm. Well, if you look at forensics, just like investigation, the
Mhm.
fingerprint they can link to a person. And then like a cell, like a hair cell, they can find the DNA of that hair cell and link it to somebody. So there are these little breadcrumbs that are left. And if physically we can leave breadcrumbs, why not energetically, thoughtfully?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
why not? So
Well, and because another theory around even just information in the brain, going back to you were saying with traumatic brain injury, I forgot to mention a thing and it just popped up back up in my head. There's the interesting syndrome called spontaneous savant syndrome.
oh
When
yes. Uh-huh.
somebody sees a traumatic brain injury, that they wake up maybe out of their coma or just being unconscious with an entirely new skill they didn't have before. And it's rare, but there's been instances of like, there's a kid who got beamed in the head with a baseball and he woke up being able to speak Spanish fluently. And there's another guy I think he was in a car crash and he woke up out of his coma being able to play the violin like a virtuoso. And so that turns everything on its head. How is that possible? And I think a lot of people, oh, it's just weird and strange. It's like, well, but it happened. And so it needs to be talked about because that kind of puts a different spin on how the brain works. And
Mm-hmm.
the theories around that is that when we practice something, the idea is that we're creating muscle memory. If you're doing dance or martial arts or playing the piano or playing the violin, you're creating muscle memory. Well, muscles don't have memory. It's just an expression to talk about how you're building the neural pathways in your brain, making them stronger, making them faster. That's how we learn to walk as a kid. It's very difficult to walk as a kid. Watch a 12-month-old, 14-month learning to walk. It's very clunky and they're falling over and it's all this left foot, right foot stuff. Well, they're firing hundreds of millions of neurons in the brain. And neurons that fire together wire together, as they say. So when neurons fire at the same time, they'll form a pattern and lock down together. And that's how we learn to walk or play the piano or dance or do martial arts or whatever, is those neural pathways will form, get stronger and get faster. And then it becomes easy for us. Well, that doesn't explain spontaneous savant syndrome at
No.
all. So maybe it's not so much that it's the neural pathways growing stronger and faster that allows us to do this, but it's just becoming a bigger antenna to pull in the
Right,
information.
like you said, tuning into that radio station.
And so maybe part of the neural pathways, the more you practice something, the more you're building a bigger antenna so you can pull in even more information about martial arts or dance or the violin or learning to walk. And what happens in spontaneous savant syndrome is that it's sort of like you're driving down the road and your car hits a pothole and you just the radio station switches and now you
Mm.
have an entirely new form of communication. And now you play the piano. And so the thing is, it's like, you can't ignore these rare occurrences and if you want to learn Spanish, don't have your friend throw baseballs at your head. It's a really rare occurrence that this actually happens, but it's happened. And it's
Well,
been,
and you look at language learning in general, you're learning a second language. You can learn each individual word, but at some point when you become conversational, it's almost like you're tuning into the mass consciousness of that language
yeah, yeah,
because it
yeah,
becomes automatic.
yeah. And it doesn't explain everything, but it's also that quote by William James. He was one of the kind of pioneers of modern psychotherapy that says, to prove all crows are not black, I only need one white crow. It's like, well, even with past life regression, I only need one person who's had a past life regression that's verifiable to prove that it's real. And I think Brian Weiss did that very well with Many Lives, Many Masters. And so, let alone, all the research that's been done with Michael Newton or the books of
Mhm.
Dolores Cannon or Ian Stevenson or even my book,
Yeah.
the information and the research is out there. think it's been proven over and over again that people have had experiences. Yeah,
I'm just
people. Oh, there you go. Yeah,
messages from the masters. This is a great book, Brian
yeah,
Weiss. Yeah, it goes on. It's like near me in my podcast because it's so powerful. I hear you. Oh, this is
yeah,
fun. This is really fun.
yeah. And so it's, again, if you only need one person
Mm-hmm.
who has a verifiable past life, so it's like, okay, well, I guess that's how it works. And there are scammers out there, and there's people who faking it, but that doesn't mean all of them are fake. It
Right.
just means that, yeah, that person's faking it.
Yeah.
That doesn't prove that past lives aren't real. And again, I think it's to prove not all crows are black. You only need one white crow. To prove that past lives are real, you only would need one person, let alone all the information, studies and research around reincarnation. Yeah, there are fake stories out there. But there's so many that, yeah, there's no other explanation. It's sort of that Sherlock Holmes thing. When you eliminate the impossible, whatever is left over, however improbable, is the answer. Say,
Mm-hmm.
well, there's no other way this could happen unless this kid had a past, or is at least pulling in the information. It's not a direct
Right.
reincarnation. Maybe they're just pulling in the information for healing and resolution.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
lots of different ways of looking at it. And like you were just saying, that's what makes it fun and makes it interesting. And I don't know if we'll ever get.
Yeah. And when you're in the clinical setting, when you're taking someone through a past life regression, um, are there signs that someone's really doing it, or can you tell if someone's just making something up because they know they're supposed to say something? Because when I was doing mine, I was like, is this really like I was like caught myself sort of doubting, and then I was like, no, just relax and just let any word come out that wants to come out. But
Yeah.
I was wondering your process and how you get someone to that state where they can tune in, they can find that frequency to verbalize their past life
Yeah. And
experience
we
or
have
the
a
current.
clinician, not only in the emails that go back and forth or a conversation over the phone before, kind of as a consultation to discuss it a little more, that we have a conversation about that you may feel like you're making it up
Mhm.
or you feel like it's not real. And the point of the past life regression is pulling as much information as possible. Analyze it later. You have hours, days, weeks, and months to analyze all the information. So download as much information as possible. But because, again, you're pulling in this information through this funnel, like this fire hose of information through the funnel into your brain and trying to translate into 3D information, it may seem like you're just making it up. But it's also that oddball thing of, let's say somebody's super into the Civil War. They research it. They have all the books. They go to all the classes and the lectures, and they even have a uniform. And they go to Gettysburg every year and do the reenactment and run across the field with their big old gun and bayonet and all that, and reenact the war there. And then they say, "Oh, I should do a past life regression." And of course, it's the Civil War. They go back to the Civil War. And at the end of it, say, well, they're disappointed because, well, of course, I went back to Civil War. I'm so into the Civil War. But it's the chicken
Mhm.
and the egg thing. Are they so into the Civil War in this current life because they had a past life? Or did they have a past life because they're so into the Civil War? Why would they be that interested in the Civil War unless potentially they're trying to resolve something?
There's a strong tie there. I mean, yeah.
Or you're interested in a culture that isn't of your ancestry.
Mhm.
So, Craig Meriwether, you don't get more English and Scottish and Irish than that. Like 95% of my DNA is the United Kingdom. But I have these interests in like the Middle East and North Africa and India. And that has nothing to do with my heritage or my culture or how I grew up. But it fascinates me, not so much other cultures. But it's like there's just something that attracts me to that. Why? It doesn't make any sense. I didn't grow up with any of that. It's not a part of my heritage or my ethnicity or my culture. So why do I have an interest in that? Is it because it's tied to past lives I've lived before? Or, again,
Mhm.
oftentimes more questions than answers. But, I think as we start pulling the curtain back even more with all the research that can be done, it's becoming more and more evident that there's more to it than just this one life, and then it's all over.
Hmm. Yeah, in mine, I had one where I was definitely in India. I was a very tall woman. I was wearing like I could feel my fabrics and everything about that. And I had another one where I was in itchy like wool, like
Yeah.
Scottish clothing. Um, and another past life, I was in Egypt.
Mhm.
And I was a priestess in Egypt. But two of my past lives, I got stabbed in the back, like
Yeesh.
murdered.
Yeah. Right.
And so
It's intense.
the one where I was in India, I wasn't. That was just peaceful, and that was like a dreamy type past
Yeah.
life. But my other two, it was, it was like I was like, oh, that's why I have trust issues. Like past lives I've been stabbed in the back, and it gave me a chance to work through that. Like, okay, like I that happened, and I haven't. This is another shot, and I can be wise, but know that it's not the end. If it happens again, it's not the end.
Yeah.
It's the end of that experience. The whole, can I jump over the cliff again? Can I be vulnerable again? That's a real tricky one for me. But had I not done past life regressions, I I might still be playing small and not putting myself out there for fear I'm going to get literally murdered.
Yeah.
Like it's not safe, right? So it helped
Well,
me
and
feel
that's a great
free.
example of how a past life can be tied to your current life. You've had these
Mhm,
experiences, and if they don't get resolved, if there's not healing around it in that past life or in soul world, it's like, well, maybe you're here to help resolve those trust issues for yourself, to learn and to grow. Like, yes, this has happened in the past. How do you move forward?
mhm,
Now, well, it's time for you to come back as Julie, and you're going to figure out through this life how to trust others again while keeping up, a certain boundaries. And that's
mhm.
the part of doing this work. Yeah, it's fun to explore and it's fun to
Yeah.
discover and gain all those insights, but it's the core essence of it is about the healing and the resolution
Mhm.
that can happen so you can heal
Right.
these different aspects of that may be troubling you in your current life. If they
It's
do have sort of connection to the past life, you're
mhm.
allowed to you're allowed to let it go.
Yeah, and it's not all, because you're like, how can I don't really have the right to feel like this. Nothing's really happened
Mm.
that's that bad. But
Yeah,
this gives you another lens to say, well, you have compassion because your energetic field, your being dealt with this on some level. And so you don't have to feel like you're being indulgent or you're being ridiculous or you've made this up. You're crazy, like there's all kinds of permission you can give yourself if you can have a little insight. So to me, that's the power of a past life regression is that insight and the compassion you can have for who you're becoming now, who you in this now moment, who you be,
right.
who you
Yeah,
be.
and it can be quite frustrating and even
Uh,
disappointing, especially if you've been doing the work and you still feel that anger or that anxiety or that overwhelm or the fear, and you
mhm,
don't know why. And you've done the years of talk therapy, you've done everything right, and you still feel that way. And that what happens to a lot of people who I work with past life regression and moving up in the spirit world is they've been through the years and years of therapy and they still feel this way and it's frustrating. They've done all the work and they've read all the books and they come across Brian Weiss, Many Lives, Many Masters, or one of his others, or Dolores Cannon, or maybe my book, and
mhm,
it feels familiar to them and it feels comfortable to them.
mm, mm,
Maybe this has to do with a past life. That would explain a lot. And it's oftentimes through, focusing on, that anxiety or the anger or whatever they're going through. That's where you turn the channel to go back to the past life that is influencing all the anger I feel in this current life. That's turning the channel. Otherwise, there's all this information, there's all these frequencies that you could pull in. How would you know you're pulling in the right one? So when you have a
mhm,
focus, and the focus could even be go back to the past life that has been my most spiritual life, or go back to the past life where I meet my greatest spiritual teacher, or go back to the past life that influences my love of the country of India or something.
Oh,
It doesn't
so you're
really
saying
touch
when
me,
you work with someone, you find out those trigger points and you go to that life that would illuminate what they're experiencing now.
yeah.
Okay, because when I did mine, it was just like, let's see what shows up. I like that laser focus.
You could just have a exploratory. I just want to
Hmm.
see what my past lives are. Okay,
That's what mine was.
like multiple lives. And you can go through the hallway of doors is one kind of metaphor
Mm.
that the brain uses to tap into that. And again, it should be just for exploration and for interest, but if there's something specific, or even this is a little more broad, but go back to the past life that's most influencing my current life.
Mm.
Broad, but still kind of specific. It's not just let's just walk through the doors and open the doors and see what past life it is, which is
Yeah.
fine. I've done in Brian Weiss workshops where he's done that. And it's
Mhm.
a legitimate and very valuable. But if you have something specific that you want more information about, again, whether love of a certain culture that's not your own, or a hurt or pain that needs to be resolved, or just, boy, I'm so good at X, Y, and Z. I'm so good at dance. I'm so good at the cello. I'm so good at martial arts. Have I lived other lives where I've trained? Be this because you look at somebody like Yo-Yo Ma, one of the greatest cello players of all time. He was playing violin at the age of 4, really, really well. And so the kind of theory around that is, well, it took multiple lives for him to get to that level of mastery of this musical instrument. He just didn't show up here with being a virtuoso violin player or cello player. It took multiple lives to get here. And in his first life, he kind of sucked at it, or Bruce Lee in martial arts, or, Meryl Streep in acting. It's like, it took multiple lives to get to that level of mastery. And so it'd be fun to look at those other lives.
And do you feel like when you enter that hypnosis state and that altered state and that relaxed state, that we can get insight from our guides, our higher self,
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
and that, to ask? Because that's my big thing is you don't know what's available till you ask.
Right,
And a lot of our help can't come forward until we, with the free will, you ask, and it's of love and light. You wouldn't say, oh, anything that wants to come in help me. You'd say, I want the highest good.
right.
Any helper who can facilitate me in reaching my highest good of love and light, I welcome in. And
Yeah.
it's just knowing the words to ask, so it's there. It's there for you.
And that's the beauty and the healing power of moving up into spirit world after the death of that life. And if you live to be 90 years in that past life, of course we can't go through every minute of every year of that 90 years. So we'll look at 4 or 5 significant events in that life that have to do with influencing your current life, or the anger you have in this life, or whatever the situation
Hmm.
you're looking for. But you'll get to the end of that life, return to spirit, and move out to spirit world. And yeah, that's where you can connect with your spirit guides, return to reunite with your soul family or your soul friends, see which parts they may be playing in your life, your current life or other lives. Go to the healing place. It's pretty extraordinary. Michael Newton goes through it pretty well, really well, in Journey of Souls and Destiny of Souls. That's where
I
the
have
whole,
that book
yeah,
upstairs in my living room. I'm
the
like
work.
this. I have this much left to read of it. It's
Yeah,
beautiful.
it's like
It's
he
a
spent
it's
decades and
great.
thousands of people researching spirit world, and
Yeah.
people were having similar experiences. And so that's what those 2 books are all about. And they're quite extraordinary.
Yes, I'm drawn to it too. And oh my gosh, we're coming up on our time, and I know you have a hard stop, so I will put a link to your book in the show description and the notes. And thank you so much. This has been a delight.
Yeah. Thank you, Julie.